There's a book out, The Honesty of Truth About Dishonesty. And we're going to come back to this a few times because it's so easy and yet it's so hard. Nearly everybody cheats, but usually only a little, says Dan Arley, the author of this book. And Arley found in a nutshell that everybody has the capacity to be dishonest. And almost everybody cheats by just a little. Except for a few outliers at the top and the bottom, the behavior of almost everyone is driven by two opposing motivations. On the one hand, we want to benefit from cheating and get as much money as possible. And the other, we want to get as much glory as possible. On the other hand, we want to view ourselves as honest, honorable people. Sadly, it is this kind of small and mass cheating, not the high-profile cases of Bernie Madoff and etc., that is the most corrosive to society. That's because most of us think we are pretty wonderful. We can cheat a little and still keep that good person identity. Most people won't cheat so much that it makes it harder to feel good about themselves. People who live by the good person construct try to balance their virtuous self-image with their selfish desires. Now remember, this goes back 2,000 and 3,000 years. You're not unique, I'm not unique, we're all subject to this. In this construct, a moral life is more like dieting. I give myself permission to have a few cookies because I had salad for lunch and dinner. I did that with Dean Molnau's the other night. I got home and I said, I really was cheating a lot because I didn't even eat a salad. I had a prime rib. When I look all over my life, my overall life, I see that I'm still a good person. Obviously, though, there's a measurement problem with virtue. You can't buy a scale and put it in your bathroom floor to measure virtue. You can measure your weight, but not your virtue. And given our awesome capacities for rationalizations of self-deception, most of us are going to measure ourselves leniently. Your moral standards will gradually slip as you become more and more comfortable with your own rationalizations. You really shouldn't shoot for goodness, which is so vague and forgiving. You should shoot for rectitude. What is rectitude? It's a strict adherence to the rules and just or right behavior, self-discipline. In last Saturday's newspaper, David Brooks said in Las Vegas, as we go about doing our good person moral calculations, it might be worth asking, is this good enough? Is this life of minor transgressions refreshingly realistic, given our natures as it is for settling for mediocrity? I think not. A prize-winning physicist, Nobel Prize winner, Richard Feynman said, you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Allow me to take us on a 3 or 4 minute deep dive into some intellectual stimulating, I think, test. I want to capture it in one word, envy. Thomas Aquinas defined envy as sorrow at another's good. There's a German word, and I can't pronounce German, but it's Schadenfreude, which is pleasure derived from the misfortunes of others. I've also included in our package George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior. It's a great book. He took it when he was 14 years old and wrote down these 100 and some rules. And the 22nd rule is, show not yourself glad at the misfortune of another, though he were your enemy. So there's 3 quotes there that say they all the same thing, because that's who we are, all of us. And envy is not the same as ambition or aspiration to have or to attain the good that another person has. Such aspirations can be good. Whether the good aspired to be a spiritual good, which is relation to a God, or a psychological good, relation to self or to others, or even to material good, a relationship to things that we have in the world, though the latter easily slides into avarice, which is greed. Aspiration looks up and says, I aspire to be there too. That's okay. Every envy is the only one that gives a person no pleasure at all, not even a fake pleasure, and only temporary satisfaction. It causes nothing but pain and sorrow. Envy removes joy because envy is the opposite of gratitude, and gratitude is the seedbed of joy. Envy is sorrow in another's good. Envy hates the other for having something good. Envy's word is, I'm just as good as you. C.S. Lewis points out that no one ever said that, believed it. It's the word of one who feels inferior and resents it. The opposite of envy is contentment. J.A. Tiberti was content. Mark Twain said, a man will do anything to get himself loved, and he will do all things to get himself envied. Whether we acknowledge it or not, most of us keep a running tally of what we have and compare it to what other people have, and we know what we have and what they have. For instance, my sister has a new baby, but I have a more active social life. You're going to find that in this book of Nice. It's unbelievable how simple this is, and yet how it comes across as a different way. My best friend makes more money, but I have a more interesting job. We keep running tallies, and mostly we feel fine as long as things stay roughly equal. That's envy. Charlie Munger, who's the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's big international company, I was at a speak about a year ago, and he described envy as one of the great problems we all have. And he said, let me describe it to you this way. Tito, you move into this beautiful neighborhood, and you have $1 million house, and you have a Cadillac, and you have a Suburban, and you make $1 million a year. You're the big man on the block. You're happy. Dr. Molinazzi moves in next door, tears down the house, builds a $2 million house. He has a Mercedes, and he's got a Ferrari in the deal, and he makes $2 million a year. You're now unhappy. What has changed for you? You were just happy until so-and-so, the dean with all that money he inherited, comes in and has more than you, and now all of a sudden you're unhappy. Now that's a puffed up story, but as long as everything stays close to it equal, we think we're happy. It's a dangerous place for us to go. That was our deep dive. Enough of that. We're going to talk about a way to make decisions is invert. Always invert. Think forward and think backwards. Preparation. The only way to win is to work, work, and work. I can't believe that every Saturday my father, and you'll see up here Don Beagle, we met with the different guys in the office. Every Saturday everybody showed up because it was the only way we could have time to basically invert, to say what were the other people thinking, how did we get here, let's turn this upside down and look the other way. A guy that used to work for us was named Frank Martin, and he was a roof sheathing. He'd come in and subcontract for us as a carpenter and put roof plywood on some of the big buildings, and he would do it piecework and time materials. He worked for as a carpenter, and then eventually started his own company. And when my father died, he was a competitor at the time, and they asked him to make a comment, and he said that J.A. told him one great piece of advice was, he said, in the construction business, the competition is really hard, Frank, but it's only the first 40 hours of every week. and then your competition goes home. So Frank said he took that as on Saturdays everybody else is out playing golf and we were always at the office working because they're just as smart as you. You're all smart in this class. You're smarter than these kids taking social studies like I did. But at the end of the day, it's work, work, and you invert the problems and you try to get some insight. Albert Einstein said, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used that we created the problems. Same thing. The way complex adaptive systems work and the way mental constructs work is that problems frequently get easier. Charlie Munger said that. And I'd even say usually easier to solve if you turn them around in reverse. In other words, if you want to help India, the question you should ask is not, how can I help India? It's, what is doing the worst damage in India? What will automatically do the worst damage, and how do I avoid it? In life, unless you're more gifted than Einstein, inversion will help you solve problems. Let me use a little inversion now. What will really fail in life? What do you want to avoid so you don't fail in life? Sloth, unreliability. If you're unreliable, it doesn't matter what virtues you are. I might have been 5 or 6 years old, and we phone call in this little track house, and my dad said, come on, go with me, where are we going? We had one superintendent, Sam Earle. I thought Sam Earle was my dad's God and Savior, and he was a great, great superintendent. Where were we going? To bail him out of jail for drunkenness. Got arrested, and my dad, this was the second or third time he had done it, I didn't know that. And he was going to fire him the next day, and I said, geez, why would you do that? And he said, you know, we have a giant concrete pour tomorrow, and this is the second or third time that he's there 98% of the time. But the 2% of the time that he decides to get drunk and get thrown in jail is when all the guys are going to be showing up at 6 in the morning to pour this slab, and the best guy we have, he's unreliable. He's not there. So he said, we're in the business to make money, not to keep bailing. Unreliable. As good as he was, he terminated him. And I had a hard time with that, and yet I look back and working on this speech, it was a good example of what I learned from my father, that as good as you are, if you're unreliable, you can't make up for it because there's other people depending on you. It's an automatic part of your conduct, and you want to avoid both sloth and unreliability. Charlie Munger also says that the highest form of civilization can be reached is a seamless web of what? Deserved trust. Not much procedure, just totally reliable people correctly trusting one another. Would you like to be in a surgery, having your hip replaced, and somehow there's not a trust between the doctor, anesthesiologist, and the nurse, and everybody else? We weren't union in our, we weren't OSHA drug testing in our company for a long time. I just thought the union sent our carpenters out, and one day a couple of guys came to me and said, our guys want to be drug tested. I said, they do? It's too complicated. Why are we going to do this? I was also in the hotel casino business, and we were drug testing there. And then I found out we couldn't use urine because people would take somebody else's urine and switch it, and they'd put it under their arm and it'd be warm and blah, blah. What are you talking about? We're going to do hair tests now because unless they shave all the hair on their body, we can know exactly what they're doing. So I said, geez, we don't want to get into this drug testing. Why do they want to do this? They said, because we're finding out that a lot of our carpenters, union carpenters, iron erectors, are doing dope. Cocaine, methamphetamine. And we're on the other side of this beam, 80 feet in the air, and a big crane's craning over, and this guy's doped up. It's not safe. We have no trust. This guy's not reliable. It could miss it and knock me off. We don't want him on the job. Made sense to me after I heard that. They wanted drug testing so that the guy, the partner in this deserved trust, there was no trust there because they didn't know what the other guy on the other side of the beam was not even there. He was someplace else, not physically able to do it. So we had to start drug testing because the workmen required it, because they were worried about their own safety.